Morning, guys. That's stupid. I'm just doing that again. Okay. How's everybody doing this morning? Oh, I had a terrible sleep. My leg was bothering me all night long, and so was my brain. So, just a couple days ago, Brett Weinstein was on Tucker Carlson again, and to be perfectly honest with y'all, I'm doing a hack here for sake of brevity so I can add it into a Substack I'm doing, talking about this exact thing that Brett Weinstein is talking about in juxtaposition against what Tucker Carlson has been saying, where he said he doesn't believe in evolution. And neither do I. Not really. And I will explain why now. I believe in adaptation. I believe that we are understanding things about the construct or the matrix or whatever anybody who's really thinking is calling it at this point. If you're not talking about things in those terms, I mean, you're just, okay, maybe go find some cat videos or something. But here we're talking about, Brett is talking to Joe about DNA and the fact that DNA is an incomplete story, which is something that I've been hammering on. But I want to point out some things about what he says here, because he is explaining to us his worldview, and he is saying, I'll just tell you, he's saying that there is a software designer, but there's not a creator. And I don't know how deluded you have to be to say that out loud, unless you're just simply not being perfectly honest with the people that you're talking to. So, okay, so here we go. He's talking about Watson and Crick. Well, I'll interject. I'll interject as he goes along, and hopefully I can keep this coherent.
Now, Watson and Crick elucidate the structure of DNA. They say it hasn't escaped our notice that this provides a place for the information that Mendel had pointed to, that Darwin had implied, that fits in the DNA, right? At that moment, our vision of heredity narrowed radically, okay? Because we had this description of how it is that information can live inside of a biological organism, be passed parent to offspring, and be selected in a way that causes adaptation, right? That story is absolutely true. We know it to be true, and it's...
Yeah, adaptation is absolutely true. Adaptation is absolutely true. It is not the same thing as evolution, just to be clear. Adaptation is 100% true from what we can tell, not the same thing as evolution. So he's pulling a bait and switch here, just to be clear. And then he's going to tell you how he's pulling a bait and switch. It's crazy.
So powerful and elegant that it caused biology to focus on it as if it was Darwin's mechanism, period, the end.
Correct.
The error is that it's not Darwin's mechanism. It is a Darwinian mechanism. And the problem is, as powerful as it is, right, the story that they teach us, random mutations in protein coding genes are almost always bad. Every so often, there's a good one. Selection tends to accumulate the good ones, and the creatures...
Okay. Selection or adaptation, in the way that he's framing it, which is evolution, tends to select the good ones. Okay, the good ones. The good ones what? The good ones what? Let's go on.
And their special characteristics are all the results of all the collected good adaptations with all of the bad adaptations, or mutations. All of the good mutations collected and all of the bad mutations lost. That story is not, in my opinion, powerful enough to explain the amazing characteristics of creatures. Right? It's some of them.
It is not.
Explain, for example, how you get a pigment molecule, right?
Yes.
So a plant is green because it can't use green light. It's collecting other wavelengths of light. How can you get a molecule that happens to collect certain wavelengths of light? That story that I just told you about mutations and protein coding genes can get you to a pigment, right?
But can it get you to where an octopus can change its texture and completely camouflage itself to look like a coral reef?
No. I don't think it can get you from a shrew to a bat, right?
No, it cannot.
Right. Shrew to a human.
Right. So,
to be clear here, he's talking about speciation. Okay? The problem with the idea of evolution is in speciation, the point at which one species becomes another species through random adaptation of DNA, which is false. There's no evidence for that. It gets more complex. Hang on.
You now have a problem, which is, A, you've got Darwinists and other biologists who have been backed into a corner, and they've sworn up and down that mutations in protein coding genes, if you give it enough time and enough selective force, can do everything we see. And
clearly they
because
cannot.
They know that the story they're telling is true in some regards. They just keep...
Yeah, it's true in some regards. Okay, this is called the God of the Gaps argument. Okay? It's a terrible argument. It says that God is a byproduct of time and the creation itself. That is what they're framing as God. But it still doesn't adequately answer all the questions. Okay, let's keep going.
Stretching it so it covers everything. I don't think it does cover everything. In
It
fact,
does
I've
not.
thought since I was in college that there was a missing layer, right? That there is a layer that explains how the amazing alterations in form that we see is produced by Darwinian processes, right? Selection interacting with heredity. And I think we've just missed it. So just to take an analogy so this will be clearer to people. A computer, a modern computer, functions based on binary.
Okay. So this is where modern computer science tells us that ones and zeros, yin and yang, up and down, back and forth, in and out, everything is playing off against each other, and that is the nature of material reality. What he's saying to us right now is that there's something missing from our explanation of material reality, and he's likening it to a programmer. But that's not an intelligent designer. Let's hear how he explains that away.
The flipping of switches that have exactly two states. If you were to sit down with, I don't know, an AI or a sophisticated computer game, and I say, yep, that thing is programmed in binary to do these amazing things that you're seeing, right? There's a technical truth there, but that's not, you couldn't program a game like that in binary. Nobody did. It's not how it happened. There's a layer that's missing. There's a layer called compilers and computer languages that allows a human being, through a very regimented process, to specify things such that the binary layer can do its job. Right? The computer is binary, but there's a whole layer between binary and Halo 3 or...
So now he's suggesting there's a conscious action at play. There is consciousness at play within the code, which is correct. We co-create reality with our actions within the matrix, but I'm going somewhere with this, and he's going to completely drop the fucking ball, and I'm going to laugh when he does it. Sorry, it's my ego, I suppose.
or whatever. Right. Gets your plan. So I'm arguing there's another layer, and I believe it does live in the DNA, but it is not protein coding genes, right? It is not limited in the same way. So what this does to a guy like Tucker is it leaves him debating between two camps. And it happened. You had Stephen Meyer on? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know Stephen Meyer. Really like him too. Stephen Meyer is obviously a believer in intelligent design.
True believer. Believes in resurrection.
Yeah, because resurrection was true. That was the one true God. This is what I keep harping on, and I will explain why at the end. But if you don't believe in resurrection, then you don't believe in the one true God. And if you do believe in resurrection, then you believe that Jesus Christ was God. This is the delineating line between a true believer and a non-believer. So if you say that God was not who he says he was, well, then what does that leave you with? That leaves you with the creation being the producer of God. So you are co-creator of God. Brett sees himself as a God, as co-creating with God, the God of the construct. He is telling us that he believes the construct created everything. But he's going to go deeper. Hold on.
Yep. Now, here's the other thing I know about Stephen Meyer, because I've had the good fortune to spend some time with him, to break bread, to talk to him about biology. He really loves biology, and he's good at thinking about it. He's passionate about it. In fact, where I overlapped with him was at a little conference, and he brought swim goggles for anybody who wanted them, because he wanted to go into the Mediterranean and go look at animals, because it's cool, right?
Yeah.
This guy's passionate. He's not a faker.
Right.
So here's what I would say. He will not be surprised to hear me say, because I've said it directly to him, I don't think he's got it right. He's looking for flaws in Darwinism because he thinks what will be revealed is a divine creator. I think there are flaws in Darwinism. I think they reveal the fact that we've missed a bunch of Darwinism, right? This is no obstacle to us being friends and sharing an appreciation for biology, okay? But it does mean that in the end, we're betting on different outcomes of the experiment. But we're both...
Okay. Okay, did you hear that? We're betting. So he's making now a binary, but he says there's something beyond the binary. We're betting on different outcomes of, what did he say? The experiment. That's an interesting thing to say. What does it mean? I think that he's not being honest with us.
committed to finding those errors and figuring out what's there, right? Should I be troubled by the fact that he believes in a divine creator?
No.
Not really any more than I should be troubled by a biologist who's motivated by a desire to win a big prize.
So do you think there's a process that's yet...
Okay, what's the big prize? Maybe, okay. Follow me now. Maybe Brett is the biologist who's hoping to win the big prize that he's talking about. You ever heard of Rocco's basilisk? I've written about it. It believes that, well, we do live in a kind of simulation, and the simulation was created by the god of this simulation. And if we don't bow down to him, weird. If we don't bow down to him, then he will destroy us in the end. Okay, so just so we're clear, Brett is betting on the side of Lucifer. Hold on.
to be discovered? There's something else going on?
Yeah, and I think we've glimpsed it. But
We've glimpsed it.
I think there's another way that information is stored in DNA that is not in triplet codons.
Clearly.
It's the equivalent of either, we have different kinds of computer languages. Not all of them are compiled. Some of them you can just write directly and tell the computer to operate.
Now he's talking about quantum computing. This is the shit I've been telling people about for months. They believe that out of the quantum realm, this information is going to enter itself into the construct through artificial intelligence, and it is going to be like a new god. Okay? He's praying to the god of the construct. His mind is trapped in the matrix because he doesn't believe in the creator. He believes in the creator of this construct, and he is putting all of his chips on the creator of this construct being the one true God. He's inverting reality because he doesn't believe in Jesus Christ. I'm going to bring that together and tell you why that's important at the end.
Right, but it's the equivalent of a computer language that turbocharges the process of adaptation. And so
He's replacing the God of the gaps with the God of the creation. Just so we're clear. And I should say, when I say that, I don't mean the creator. I mean the God of the creation. I'll come back to that.
the point about Stephen Meyer is he makes a number of different arguments about problems he spots with Darwinism. I don't think some of them really are problems, but there is one that strikes me as real. Right? They call it the waiting time problem. And the basic
God of the gaps.
We can do the math on how.
And by the way, he's about to describe something that is irrefutable if you understand why it's irrefutable. He's talking about the fact that adaptation could not possibly have happened in the way that we say it did in the standard evolutionary model, which is why he's saying there's something missing from the standard evolutionary model. He's saying there's something missing, that actually there's a software programmer that inserts all this information and creates the speciation and the differentiation between the different animals that he can't really account for, that Darwinism does not account for. So there's something missing. This is mystery school stuff, just so we are clear.
How much adaptation we see, and there isn't enough time for you to get the adaptations that you're seeing, given how much availability of time there was for those things to occur. So the point is, that process that you're claiming made these creatures couldn't have done it in the amount of time you're claiming they were created.
Correct.
Now, my point is that is actually, I think, likely true.
It's 100% true.
Process. Like, if you had to write Halo 3, I don't even know if there's a Halo 3. But
I don't know how many Halos are.
Okay.
Good, thumbs up.
If you had to write Halo 3 in binary, how long would it take you? It would take you a zillion years because,
Yeah.
it's binary. If you had to write it in, I don't know, C++, it might be doable on human timescales. So it's that kind of an error. So
Okay. Just so we're clear. Just so we're clear. Brett just came out in the open and admitted he's not a materialist. But his entire scientific worldview is based on materialist arguments. He thinks somebody's being deceptive.
I think you've got Darwinists claiming that the story is more complete than it is. My bet is the thing that's missing is every bit as Darwinian as the part of the story that we already know.
Hang
So
on.
I think, to the extent that there's an error, the error is on biologists who thought too narrowly. It's not on Darwin, right? This is not a threat to what Darwin gave us. It's just a belief that
This is probably very much rooted in Freemasonry, just so you know.
that Darwin was righter than we have yet recognized. And in the end, I think that that's what people like Stephen Meyer will discover. And I would also point out, from the perspective...
What is he talking about when he says that Darwin was righter than we have yet realized? He's talking about the evolutionary arc. Okay? He's saying that we as a species must now evolve to the next level, which is the thing that Joe Rogan argues for all the time. We need to merge with the machines. That's the next evolutionary step. By the way, that's genocide of the human race. I suppose it's just a side note. Let's just go back.
So if a guy like Tucker is listening to this and he's thinking, the story in which we've got a creator makes more sense to me than the story in which some Darwinian process produces all of this biological diversity, I would argue that ultimately you still don't escape Darwinism.
Okay. Why does one need to escape Darwinism? Do you understand? What does that mean? He's choosing Rocco's basilisk. He's choosing the god of this creation. He's choosing Lucifer. Lucifer is the god of this earth. And everything that Lucifer does and everything he taught, going back to the Elysian mystery schools, Babylon, all of it, was about setting the groundwork so that people bought him as the god of this earth. And he gave people power, and he gave people the muse, and because, the god of this earth can inspire actual joy, and how do we experience that? We can do it through deep meditation. We can do it through communication with the divine by praying to the divine of this world, the god of this world. And it's not divine, by the way, but it is the god of this construct. He's saying it's a software programmer. He's saying we're co-creating with the software programmer. And he's saying that we cannot escape the fate, the end. He's still suggesting that there's an end point coming, a singularity. This is built into all of these belief systems. And I know people are having a hard time understanding what I'm trying to say, but I'm going to wrap this up because he's going to now explain why he doesn't buy that narrative, but it's because he rejects God. But he is choosing a side. He's choosing a side because of his belief system. Because he looks at the construct and he says, this must be real because this, this, and this. He doesn't understand, at least I don't think he understands on the face of it, that what he's actually suggesting is something that is rooted in something else. And he's choosing to side with Lucifer and Luciferian ideas of the world. Mystery school ideas of the world. Okay, I know it's hard to understand. Okay, hang on.
Imagine that this universe was created by somebody who had a plan. My claim would be they used Darwinian evolution to make all the creatures. In fact, I would argue if this universe is one that has a creator, that it is an evolution simulator. That's the most useful thing it does, is it figures out how creatures could...
So it's an evolution simulator, and he claims to believe in evolution, even though just a few minutes ago he basically refuted that. Just so we're clear.
Be by using this process of selection, right?
And they continue to get better.
Right. Yeah. Somebody was interested. I don't think there was a creator, but if there was a creator, I believe not only A, did they use selection.
He doesn't believe in a creator, but he believes in a software designer. This is textbook gaslighting.
and adaptation in order to make the creatures, but that's probably the reason they did the whole experiment, right? That's the most interesting thing it produces. And B, let's say, let's just give the hypothesis its due. Let's say that this was a environment created by some intentional being with the purpose of making critters using Darwinian evolution. Okay, so then...
Nope. No, it was created by God with the purpose of... Well, I mean, I explored that a long time ago when I wrote my Substack, Intelligent Design in the Funnyverse. Like, what would be the purpose of God creating this reality? And I suggested that in order to bring people into the fold, have them join God in heaven and give them that kind of divine spark, they would need to not be corrupt. Because what's the story of Satan? Satan wanted to take over heaven for himself, which, in essence, if we believe it metaphorically, could have unmade reality. You can't have more than one creator. I hope that makes sense, because it would negate itself. You can't have two gods. There can only be one. Just like the Highlander told us. There can only be one. And to join, our souls must not be corrupted. So this is a test to see whether or not we want to overthrow God. Hold on. I'll explain why this doesn't make sense. Well, I mean, like, whatever. I don't know what's in his heart, Anna. I'm just telling you what I think he believes.
You've heard Elon say, well, if it's possible to simulate universes, then there are bound to be vastly more simulated universes than there are real universes. So we're probably in one. Now, I don't really buy that analysis, but let's say that it's true.
I don't really buy that analysis, but let's say that it's true. Okay, what? So now he's going to make it a hypothesis based on something that he doesn't really believe, even though that's exactly what he's been describing for the last 10 minutes. Y'all paying attention? Okay.
You get outside of your simulated universe into what he calls base reality. Okay, now what? Right? Was that one created too? By whom? Right? At some level, you're going to get far enough out that you have to invoke a natural process. And that natural process is going to involve something without a creator, right? There's no philosophical place. Even if we're inside something that was intentionally created, that something is inside something that wasn't. It has to be. You eventually get out to that layer. And at that point, if there was a creator, an intelligent designer of this cup, right? What designed that creator?
Right.
Darwinian selection, right? Let's suppose that's not true. Let's suppose that the creator of that cup is inside a simulator made by another creator. What made that creator? Darwinian evolution. Well, let's suppose that's not true. You go one layer out. Eventually, you're going to get to the place where you're going to have to surrender to the only thing anyone's ever come up with that could, in principle, create intelligent creatures. And it doesn't have a creator. It's a Darwinian process.
All right.
Okay. Here's the problem with Brett's argument. It is a question that doesn't understand the question. And this is what I've gone into in multiple Substacks and creation. No, Tim, Santa Claus is not real. But God is not Santa Claus. God exists outside of time and space and is an omnipotent, an omnibenevolent creator. But he is also giving us a test to try to understand something that is difficult for us mere mortals to understand, in my humble opinion. But Brett doesn't understand it. Brett is buying the construct. But what is Brett missing? He's missing a purpose for the construct. His purpose that he's accepting, is that the purpose is strictly evolution. It relates back to atomism. This relates back to the mystery schools. This relates back to all the things that I keep pointing at that are an answer without a properly formulated question. And the suggestion is that the odds are so unfathomable that we might be the product of a god. They flip it, they invert it, and say, well, obviously we're the product of the creation. Okay, so the number one sin in Christianity is to worship the creation and not the creator. What is a false idol? What did the Israelites always get wrong? What are they getting wrong right now? They're worshiping the creation and not the creator. And that's where it always goes wrong. Why? Because it leads to genocidal movements. It's happening again right now. What is the byproduct of secular humanism? What is Agenda 2030? The Fourth Industrial Revolution, Internet of Bodies, Things, Behaviors. It is the belief that we are going... What is the biodigital convergence? It's all genocide of the human race. It's all genocide of the human race. But what he's missing in his argument is, well, what's the point? What's the point of it all? If it's a simulation, which he says it isn't, but he also says it is, when does the simulation stop? You know, he makes a really interesting argument earlier on when he talks about the fact that he doesn't believe there's a multiverse, because that creates an infinite scenario where there's all these different existences that exist, or all these different possibilities that exist, but it couldn't possibly be computable. That makes perfect sense. If the universe is information, which it probably is, at least as far as we can tell, if it's a simulation, which is one way to look at it, we are not part of the simulation. That's what God told us. God told us that we are not part of the simulation. We are different than all the other things in the universe. We are different. That's why the concept of pantheism doesn't work. There's not a spark of divinity in the creation, because the creation itself is not the point. The point is for us to worship God and be thankful for our time on earth, because when we don't look at things in that term, we kill each other. That's the truth. There was only one God. It was Jesus Christ. He came and he told us not to kill each other. He said, cut that shit out. I'm God. I'm telling y'all, you need to stop doing this shit. And by the way, there's going to be a time coming where you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to choose them, or you're going to choose me. Brett is telling us he's choosing them. I hope that makes sense. But he's saying that he chooses them because he rejects the original premise of God, which is to say, stop killing each other, stop being genocidal. If you believe in the creation, you are going to end up thinking genocidal thoughts. It's happened time after time, and it's happening again. Except this time, with the advent of artificial intelligence and all of this stuff, the singularity, the point is coming. What does the Christian Bible say that is completely unique amongst world religions? In its eschatology, it has the end times. It has the beast. It has the mark of the beast. All of these things are happening, and they're not happening in the way that most people think about them. They're happening in the realm of technology. They're happening in the realm of information science. So what are we saying? We're saying that everything is made of code, okay. And what are we saying about mRNA or gene therapy technology? We are saying that we're going to create a code that we're going to insert into a person's genome that is going to be like a mark that is going to control them, merge with them, and make them no longer connected to the divine spirit that is God. I know it's hard to understand. But at the end of the day, I'm for peace, I'm for love, I'm for God, and I'm for a creator that told us not to do all this stuff to each other. Talking about Jesus left the Bible and he was told, yeah, no, that's all bullshit, Tim. That's all Gnostic bullshit. It's all Gnostic, but all of these things were inserted into the creation by people that worship Lucifer. It's still happening. A lot of this stuff is being inspired by Lucifer. A lot of the technology is being inspired by Lucifer. They believe, and we cannot finish this thought without talking about the aliens and the disclosure and the imminent disclosure and Louis Elizondo running around saying, oh, it turns out the aliens are here, and it turns out maybe they're the gods. They are not the gods. They're not the gods. And there's a choice coming. And I'm just, look, I know how uncomfortable this can make people feel. But if you don't have this base level understanding of what's happening right now, you do not have the ammo with which to fight. And the ammo with which to fight is to say nonviolence, is to say to not buy it. There's a lot of people fighting one another over ideas right now, but as soon as you start engaging in that battle, you are losing. You are losing. If you don't understand, the one true God is the one that wanted you not to be caught fighting each other for supremacy. If you understand that, if your conception of what God is means that you need to genocide the entire human race by converging us with a digital design, I know, brother. But I'm telling you right now that, and people are saying that Tucker is not, he's causing problems. Well, at least Tucker says, a lot of the things that Tucker says are true. He says that he believes in God. He believes in this idea of a creator, but he also says some other things that are suspicious. And I'm going to find a clip on that later. But again, I just did all this just so I could interject it into a Substack that I'm doing that explores the larger picture. And I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, you better have God in your heart, because if you don't, he doesn't have you. And that's the way that it works. That's honestly what I've come to believe, and I don't know how else to say it. But these people, when they reject God, they also accept Lucifer. And if you hear what they're saying, if you understand the flaws with their logic, you can make sense of it. So that's what I'm trying to help people do. I'm trying to help you make sense of the fact that there are massive flaws in this guy's logic. He says that evolution is the only thing that matters. That means bye-bye human race. Okay? God said, don't kill each other. That's the distinction. He said that if you try to kill each other, there's going to come a time when you're going to choose between Lucifer and me. And what do we know about what happens at that time? I would suggest you start really thinking this through, and it would help if we as a society could have compassion for... I'm not saying anything nasty about Brett. Not at all. I'm saying that I just think Brett is wrong. I don't think he's evil. I just think he's wrong. I think the ideas that he's embracing are evil. Because, unfortunately, evil is as evil does. And then we're seeing that right now. Okay. Have a happy day. Love you guys. God bless. Well, I'm going to look that up. Thanks, Anna. Unfortunately, Tim, yes. That's what it looks like. Okay. Peace.